As we reported earlier, U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar said today that the Trump administration is working to comply with a federal court order to reunite immigrant families that had been separated at the border. On a press briefing phone call today, Lisa Desjardins asked the secretary about the children who are still in the government's care and can report on what we've learned. So, Lisa, you were on the call. What did you learn?
Well, I think there were two headlines here. One is that the Trump administration is now saying it will comply with this latest court order saying that children who've been separated must be reunited with parents within 30 days or 14 days if they're under 5. That 14-day deadline is next Tuesday. HHS says in some cases the way they will do that, however, is to send those children to parents who are in detention and detain them together. The other thing, Judy, that we learned is that in some cases it seems HHS is not sure about whether a child was separated from a parent or came on their own. It's a real breakdown in the process that's a problem for reuniting these families.
So, Lisa, separately from all that, there's a set of legal documents, legal filings from a number of states. They're suing the federal government. Tell us about what you see there.
Right. This is an extraordinary trove of firsthand accounts from people who've experienced this policy. First, let's talk about that lawsuit. 17 states and the District of Columbia have filed a lawsuit. What they want, a few things. They want a court to order that this policy is unconstitutional and that it must stop permanently. They also want courts to order that asylum seekers be allowed to process and go through the border without being detained. Now, as that court case works out, the states filed 1,000 pages, nearly 1,000 pages of documentation of people who have experienced this process or have knowledge about it. Pouring through those documents, Judy, is of firsthand accounts that we've been trying to get our hands on for so long. And just overall, we see many themes that are the same. Many parents who were separated with little or no notice that they would be separated. Sometimes they were taken away to a hearing, returned to find their child had been taken.
Tell us a little bit about what you see there. What are these families saying?
First, we learn a lot about what these families in this legal documentation says how, the physical situation was for them. First of all, 15 by 15 sized cells with 30 to 50 adults, sometimes children in them as well, with one toilet usually for those people to share. Usually there's some privacy, however, it's still in the same room. And children and adults sharing that space. They're called ice boxes. Many of these people refer to them as so cold that they had to huddle together on cement floors. We also have some very gripping and frankly difficult to read personal testimonies. I want to point to one of them. This is from a mother whose 14-month-old child was separated from her and from the father. They were reunited after 85 days. She wrote, "The child continued to cry when we got home and would hold onto my leg and would not let me go. When I took off his clothes, he was full of dirt and lice. It seemed like they had not bathed him the 85 days he was away from us." She went on to say that she had thought her child being so young, he would not have really significant effects from this separation. But when she was reunited with him, she's worried that now actually he is really feeling and has changed because of the separation.
85 days without bathing.
This is her accusation, and that's the important part. We asked all the government agencies involved to respond, and they said they aren't going to respond now to this ongoing litigation. The Department of the Homeland, HHS Secretary told me on the phone, he said, "Hey, be careful. You know, we don't know if these is always HHS facilities." We did check in this case, and the facility, the location that this mother named does sync up with the place where there is an HH shelter, has been an HHS shelter for children.
And Lisa, amidst all this, troubling allegations of psychological and verbal abuse.
Throughout this, we see allegations of racial slurs, of guards calling some of these immigrants stupid, and some very particularly troubling accusations like this one from this mother. She wrote, "One of the officers asked me in Guatemala, her home country, do they celebrate Mother's Day? When I answered yes, he said, then Happy Mother's Day, because the next Sunday was Mother's Day. I lowered my head," she wrote, "so that my daughter would not see the tears forming in my eyes. That particular act of cruelty astonished me." And these are dozens of stories, all of them very difficult to read. We've just pulled out very few. It is important to say these are selected by the states. They are trying to make a case that this is a bad system. This is just 1%, we think, of the total people who have been affected by this. Many of these stories we may never hear because these are folks who have been deported, but it's important to say these are cases that were selected by those who oppose this system, but they are very gripping.
Lisa Desjardins, thank you.